Let's get there. Let's blow up some lands, baby.
All right.
All right, I'm going to send it over to the booth. Alien Corey, take it away. Boom goes the dynamite.
Thank you very much, Maria. I hope that we'll see some boom indeed in round number 2 here. I'm Ailey Loney alongside Corey Baumeister, and we have a spicy meatball to kick us off here. Corey, are you ready to see some lands go boom?
Oh, I'm so excited. This is one of the decks that we looked over pretty closely. It's definitely one of the decks that's in the other category that I think we were all really excited to see. So, yeah, I cannot wait.
Man, I love this call by the the land destruction deck here in the hands of Kenji Tsumura, just being like, you know what, people are playing all the new tri-lands, they're playing all the duels, all the pathways, as many of these, you know, fixers as they possibly can, and there's only a few basics in the deck. So if he has his way, it's gonna be bad news bears on the other side of the board.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is definitely the style of deck that Kenji wanted to play against if you're playing these kind of land destruction spells. You know, the decks that are kind of greedy. They only play a few basics. So we'll see if this plan works. I'm very curious.
There is a cleansing wildfire in hand, so we might see some explosions to kick things off quite early here, as we're going to see Luminarch Aspirin hit the battlefield, but luckily Spikefield Hazard in hand, able to get this little idiot off the battlefield before it gets its counter on. Ooh, and a Field of Ruin to boot, so let's get rid of that Rafine's Tower. Yeah, go find one of your 2 basics, it's totally fine.
Yep,
but be warned,
absolutely.
friend, I have more where that came from.
Exactly. 1 swamp, 1 plains, and you cannot get blue off of when your land gets destroyed. So that's a big deal. These Rafine towers are going to be very taxed, and I have a feeling Kenji is just going to be really focusing on destroying lands turn after turn after turn, and then deciding to play your big spells after that.
I mean, if I'm Kenji Tsumura, I'm just like, hell yeah, Field of Ruin, that's a nice tower you got there, buddy. Go get your other basic. No blue for you.
Yep, no blue. So this is going to be a really, really, really big draw step for Yuma.
It is indeed. Can we find the replacement blue here for Yuma Koizumi? It's a Kaito Shizuki, and importantly, this shut off any turn 3 play, and we know how important it is for this Esper deck. Rafine, Kaito Shizuki, none of those are available. The only thing that Yuma can do right now is Vanishing Verse.
Yeah, and Vanishing Verse is not going to be great against this Izzet land destruction deck until really late in the game, when Kenji already has control over the battlefield with something like Leer, with something like Arcane Bombardment. So early in the game, it's not going to be ideal. So it's going to be step 1. Can you deal with Luminarch Aspirin and keep that under control? And so far, Kenji is saying yes.
Yep. The answer is certainly yes, as Fading Hope, found off of that expressive iteration, is going to get rid of the pesky second copy of Luminarch Aspirant. Tenacious Underdog is the draw. Currently, all Yuma is doing is playing an Orzhov midrange deck, and that's not really where you want to be this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One card I want to point out from Kenji's hand, and just Kenji's deck, that I think is really good right now, is Burn Down the House. All these mid-range decks are playing these Planeswalkers that really don't get to loyalty over 5, and you play a lot of creatures to the battlefield. So this is one of the cards that's just cleaning up everything right now, and looks like it's at a really good position in the metagame.
For sure. You know, I think he's made a pretty good metagame call this weekend, as you mentioned. Lots of little itty-bitty creatures on the battlefield that get pumped by things like the wedding announcement or by planeswalkers. So if you can just be like, okay, cool, develop your board, it's totally fine.
And
Like,
then
you
burn
are
it all
sitting
down.
pretty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah. Flame Blast Bolt, though, a much cleaner answer here if he chooses to go that way to get rid of the Luminarch Aspirant. But he's going to just hold on a second. Let's see what happens here. In response to the trigger, Flame Blast Bolt will exile this Luminarch Aspirant, and nothing Yuma can do on the other side of things. No blue, no interaction, no shenanigans, but does find the card I mentioned in Wedding Announcement, which can help snowball the advantage in his favor if he can get going.
Yep, that does help quite a bit, and some attention to Flame Blast Bolt being really good right now as well. Tenacious Underdog being a card that's being played in a lot of these black mid-range style decks, and being able to just exile it for 1 mana and not worry about it coming back. And here we go, land destruction taking hold. I'm in love with this deck, Ailey. I am in love with it.
Oh, what's that? No more basics? You are in danger, Yuma Koizumi, who is currently our challenger leaderboard on the league standings. So, excuse me, in the challenger standings. So, gonna have to try and make something work here. Is Fading Hope in response to the Vanishing Verses? No, thank you, don't touch my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You said it right. Yuma has had an amazing season already, so putting himself in a great position, really no matter what, to get a world championship spot. Of course, you want to keep winning as much as you can to really lock it up on your own terms.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to be at the risk of someone else having to perform poorly to get you into the World Championship. So if he can keep winning, he's looking good. But at the moment, with Arcane Bombardment coming on down, yeah, that's not looking so hot, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Arcane Bombardment, a card I did not think was going to be the first big spell I'd be commentating over our first match, Ailey. This is awesome.
I love it. Give me the spice every day of the week as Thundering Rebuke takes care of one of these little 1/1s. Arcane Bombardment has an expressive iteration in the holster there. No blue land, nothing going right now for Yuma. Just this little 1/1 doing his gosh darn bestest. But does have the opportunity to get rid of Arcane Bombardment while the guard is down here for Kenji Tsumura.
Yeah, absolutely. Get it out of there while you can. Kenji decides to just clean up the 1/1 and then just trigger it again here. Oh, that is so insane. It triggers on both turns. So really, really versatile card.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, so you're going to try to take my thing? Okay, sure, fine. I'm just going to cost 2 spells, just get some more value, just ping you in the face for 1 for good measure, and going to kill your dude. So this is fine. I think he's all right with that exchange.
Yeah, I think Kenji will be doing okay. And, you know, we see Yuma... There's another land destruction spell. I was just going to say we see Yuma draw land number 3 to kind of get away from this. But now you can play Leer. You can cast that Cleansing Wildfire again to clean up another land. And all of a sudden, this is a Stone Rain that draws you a card. This is incredible.
I love it. It's like, oh, I'm sitting at 19 life. It's totally fine. Yeah, but look at the land disparity. That is what Kenji Tsumura was targeting this weekend. He knew that these tricolored decks were going to be all over the place, and that is exactly the case with Esper Midrange. So, yeah, he's having the best day of his life right now. I know I am.
Absolutely, and then Kenji did really only test with himself as far as what he has reported to us, and it makes sense because this is really the only Izzet deck, Izzet land destruction deck that we're seeing, but something like that can really pay off when you are the only one that has this kind of deck. You don't have to play a bunch of team mirror matches or something like that some of the bigger teams would have to do, and it can really yield some high results if you really did nail it. And with this much mid-range and this many greedy mana bases in the format, yeah, and with watching this one game, of course it's a small sample size, but that looked really good to me.
Oh, it did. That was just spectacular to observe, and I cannot wait for game number 2 here as we see Yuma Koizumi is ready to rock and roll. Just a couple of thinks being had here for Kenji Tsumura, a Hall of Famer from 2012. 2012, yeah. What number is that? 2012.
Yeah, and it is going to be a big difference, I imagine, with Kenji as far as all the opponents goes when it's play draw. You know, when you're on the play and you can start destroying land, start clearing out those basics as early as turn 2 when you're on the play, it's a lot different than Yuma being able to play a 3-drop and then maybe starting to run out of basics because, well, then you still have these powerful threats that are on the battlefield that will still kind of snowball, and Kenji will still have to react to those cards as well.
For sure. I mean, at the heart of it, this deck is basically just, you know, is it good stuff? Kill all your things, and then, you know, press the advantage with Leer and recasting all these spells that have found their way into the graveyard. So, yeah. I mean, let's see how this goes. But we haven't taken out any land destruction, so this is the perfect matchup for those pesky cards. And let's take a look here at the opening hands as Yuma Koizumi will be on the play.
We do see that Kenji did take out the Arcane Bombardment, so maybe this is a play-draw scenario for him, or maybe just with Esper midrange having ways to cleanly deal with it. With cards like Vanishing Verse, it's just a card you never want to commit because you see that mana investment that Kenji had to pay for then getting it completely neutralized for 2 mana is a real cost.
Yeah. For sure. Now, do have the Spikefield Hazard up for Kenji again in the opener, but it's not going to deal with this tenacious underdog, so this pesky critter will be quite the nuisance, especially with how Kenji wants to get his lands going here. It does have the option to Thundering Rebuke this away, but I'm thinking that Thundering Rebuke has one Rafine Scheming Seer. Never mind.
Yeah,
We're gonna
that
kill
was
that
the
straight
big,
away. I like it.
That was the big consideration, because you either play Field of Ruin and then Thundering Rebuke, and then you're kind of wide open to Rafine, and then it's also a little awkward for Kenji. You can't go Expressive Iteration this turn unless you want to really only get one card out of it, which is usually not the way you want to deal with this card. So instead, when in doubt, land destruction.
Yep, just blow stuff up. It's totally fine. Yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky situation there because, you know, if the Tenacious Underdog survived, then Rafine could have just, you know, gotten value off of him attacking, and he's difficult to kill because of the ward as well. So chances are you never actually get to kill him with the Thundering Rebuke when you need to.
Yeah, it was pretty awkward there, and if Kenji knew that Flame Blast Bolt was on top, maybe he would have been a little bit more wary of it, but you said it exactly right. If there's a counter on it, Flame Blast Bolt has to be paired with a Spike Field Hazard, and then all of a sudden you're 2-for-1 yourself, and things do kind of snowball out of control. Look at that top deck, though. Top decking the Swamp is probably the worst draw for Yuma. That's really brutal here.
Nice basics you got there.
Exactly.
I do, however, like that we haven't gotten a counter on Rafine just yet. If we're on Kenji's side of things, which we are at the moment, riding along with them. As if we get to 5 mana here, burn down the house, can clear out these friends.
So that's exactly probably what Kenji is going to think here. How can I make sure that Rafine doesn't get to be a 3/6? Because that would be the nightmare scenario where burn down the house can't deal with it. So we might even see Flame Blast Bolt with Spikefield Hazard dealing with Legion Angel, which is not the best way to deal with that card because you are getting multiple Legion Angels out of your deck. But just to control that worst case scenario, you know, that is an option that Kenji might take.
Yeah, so just a quick think here. For Kenji Tsumura is going to get the Field of Ruin down and has plenty of lands to make go kaboom. And like you mentioned, Legion Angel can certainly wrap up a game here.
Okay.
Pretty darn quickly for the Esper mid-range players. And Rafine this time is the target. And he's going to start dumping some non-lands to get these counters on Rafine.
Yeah, we'll see what Yuma does here. You know, you're kind of naturally inclined to get rid of one of those lands because you have an extra one. But if you foresee that maybe you have to deal with burn down the house, maybe you go a different avenue. But with that top deck of the Wandering Emperor, that is another card that could get 6 toughness onto Rafine at instant speed to kind of play around that line. So it decides that you can discard a land. But notably, Yuma did discard that Swamp, so Kenji has to be thinking, okay, that is something I have to keep in mind, that if, let's say, he destroys that white source, then you're not getting another basic here, and you can't cast Wandering Emperor at instant speed, so we'll see what Kenji chooses.
Yeah, tough choice there. You know, if there's only one blue source, I'd be like, all right, kill the ship, you know, kill the land there so that you don't get Jawari Disruption on this turn that you have to kill Rafine and this Angel. Yeah,
but with there being 2, I'm with you. Maybe it wasn't ideal, but I think Kenji's just recognizing there's too many cards that kind of blow me out if I just go for untap land, burn down the house, that he maybe has to go for a different line here.
Yeah. And with these 2 flyers already established, Yuma Koizumi is looking in a very good position right now to pick up game number 2 here in round number 2 of the new Capenna Championship. If you are just joining us, thank you very much for being here. Thanks for spending some of your time hanging out and watching as we fill the last seats in the upcoming World Championship. I cannot wait to see who makes it. Yuma Koizumi currently in excellent position, but Kenji Tsumura not too far behind the pack either, as we're going to see Wandering Emperor hit the battlefield.
Yep, and big game here. This really does kind of show, Ailey, the big difference between land destruction on the play and land destruction on the draw. Kenji even got the best case scenario, which was Yuma drawing one of the 2 basics, and still the land destruction was good, but it wasn't amazing and backbreaking like it was in game 1, where Yuma stumbled a little bit.
Definitely not. And potentially 3 more power here with the Connives here, or for Fiend's Scheming Seer, proving to be an absolute freaking nuisance. And in response, we'll see Kenji, big score. This is basically the better Unexpected Windfall, as it's just easier to cast. Or will we? Yeah. What else do we do if we're not doing that?
Yeah, I think you're so right about just saying Rafine is just kind of annoying in a lot of ways. I think everyone, when they started testing against that card, is just like, wow, that card is very hard to kill. And I think that's most of these Esper mid-range players just saying, you know what, this card is really hard to kill, so I think I'm going to play 4 of them.
And there we go. The Jawari Disruption hanging out in hand says no, thank you very much. Draws a bunch of lands. And do we have lethal here? Not yet, right? 4, 5, 6, 10, 11. Off by 2.
Yep, not quite lethal yet, but yeah, this is looking really, really tough to lose. Here from Yuma's side, just probably has in mind, how can I best play around Burn Down the House? Because we don't see in Kenji's list where there's Galvanic Iteration into Burn Down the House, something that would really clean up everything. This is not necessarily that kind of combo Izzet deck that we've seen in the past when we had, let's say, Alrund's Epiphany in the metagame. This is really just kind of playing a more fair gameplay, using Big Score as just a card advantage spell that can ramp you into your next turn's scheme, I should say.
Yeah. Now let's see what we chuck here, because if these creatures don't go over 5 toughness, Kenji might be well back in this, friend.
Yeah. Wow. Not playing around it. Okay. Yeah, looks like Wandering Emperor hasn't been activated yet, so no matter what, we have one creature that's going to live through it. And that was smart to put it on Rafine because it has that Ward 1, so you can't burn down the house plus 1 drop when Kenji could only have 6 mana.
Yeah. And I wasn't keeping track of the swamps there, but I think he possibly had the ability as well to haste out or blitz out a Tenacious Underdog from the graveyard. So, yeah, very clean win there. Managed to not have all his lands blown up, so dodged that bullet. And just, Kenji not able to keep control of the battlefield as he did in the first game.
Yeah, and we'll see if Kenji makes any, changes, play, draw. This definitely seems like one of the decks that would really benefit from being on the play for the most part and maybe change the game plan a bit. But the only thing I could see is like Arcane Bombardment coming in. But with Vanishing Versus anyways, maybe it just still isn't worth it. We do see those Smoldering Eggs coming in, which is big game if you can get those flipped against this Esper deck.
Yeah, it's just a good way to block the early pressure as well.
Yep.
And once they do flip, they start dealing 2 points of damage per instant sorcery cost. So, either going to face, clearing off pesky tokens, clearing off planeswalkers. It's a very versatile little smoldering egg there.
Yeah, and I think it's always at its best in these style of decks in the sideboard, because the one thing that players usually do against an Izzet deck where this is an open deckless tournament and they see, well, you probably only have Leers in your deck post-board as the main target for removal, so maybe they trim on those. And, if you trim on some pieces of removal, bringing in Egg is going to be a nice kind of pivot.
And I've also noticed that we're taking out the Legion Angels on Yuma's side of things, so no big birdies this time around.
Yeah, that is really interesting to me. Yuma has 2, so it is just down to the 1 copy. Yeah, most of the time we see 1, and I'm like, wow, if you take out 1, you're taking out 4 of them, but that makes sense with having 2 of them.
Nice. Alrighty, well, let's rock and roll. Take a look at this opening hand. I mean, jeez, just need some white mana on that side of things, but otherwise that hand looks pretty good there for Yuma. But it is, of course, Kenji Tsumura on the play, so Shadow Skull, the Hammer Paws, down on the battlefield first.
Yeah, keeping a land light hand against the land destruction deck always feels a little risky, but a couple lands off the top here for Yuma has to breathe a sigh of relief.
Yep, and blue source as well to get Rafine down. There is a Field of Ruin in hand here for Kenji, so I wonder if he's going to go that route and just try and prevent that 1-2 punch of Tenacious Underdog into Rafine's Scheming Seer.
Yeah, really interesting. I really like the Celestis here. There's only the 1 copy of this because it is legendary. You don't want to draw too many. But getting that card down right away is just so powerful to ramp from 3 to 5, let's say for Burn Down the House, if Kenji wants to go that route. Or just always checking the day to night, where you can just pass the turn as this Izzet deck, gain a little bit of life, and sculpt your hand throughout the entire game.
Yeah, so we don't see a Fading Hope here on the Tenacious Underdog. It's going to get the counter from Rafine, who is going to chuck Dennick into the graveyard. But you know what? These toughnesses, they're not over 5, Corey.
Yeah, they really aren't, so I think the house is coming down here, because this is going to be a nice burn down the
baby,
house.
Burn. Very nice indeed. Awesome, 2 for 1 there for Kenji, so he's got to be happy with that. And still a handful of action. Expressive Iteration, Fading Hope, Memory Deluge, and a Shadow Skull smashing if he needs to kill some more stuff on this battlefield. On the other side of things, also still looking pretty good here. There's a Wandering Emperor waiting to just jump out at instant speed. We got the Tenacious Underdog going, and that Vanishing Verse, which can take care of the single-colored threats.
Yeah, absolutely. With a counterspell being held up here as well, or Vanishing Verse, a really nice turn. See if Kenji wants to maybe just pass and Memory Deluge, or start the turn off with an Expressive Iteration to find some more goodies. Without any lands, you know, that's usually the tall tale sign whenever I'm playing an Izzet deck is like, if I don't have a land to play and I have an Expressive Iteration, you usually start there, but that's definitely not the case for every Izzet deck.
Yeah, I mean, there could also be a consideration here from Kenji to just let it go tonight, draw a card, discard. Yep. But looks like we're going to go paying 3 life for the Shadow Skull Hammer Pass, get that down on the battlefield. And do nothing, perhaps?
Yeah,
Let's
a really nice...
it's nighttime.
A really nice untap there. Now Kenji has a couple of options. You can either play a Memory Deluge or Big Score and then have 2 mana up so that you can play around, make disappear as long as you don't pay the casualty cost. Or you can Field of Ruin into one of your 4-drops if you're not trying to play around it. So we'll see what Kenji tries to do. This is, of course, open deck list, so we know that there is some make disappears as well as other disruption, but decides to go for the Field of Ruin to take out blue.
Nice. Dabba-dee-da-ba-da. There we go. Blue no longer on the battlefield. Field of Ruin's going to take care of that. And this is in the draw step, so unless there's an instant that Yuma wants to cast, you cannot use that mana into main phase 1.
Kenji doing a great job there, recognizing that there is no blue basics, there's no islands. So if there's not one in hand, you know, that would cut Yuma off of it. We do see this pathway coming down to change that.
Yeah. And with this Rafine coming out, that also shuts off the Make Disappear, so he's free and clear to interact with this board however he chooses.
Kenji deciding if he wants to fire off the Big Score now to maybe have some way to interact with Rafine. Realizes that there's no real counterspell for it, but you could get Flame Blast Bolt right now, so Kenji decides to do this immediately.
Ooh, Cleansing Wildfire. Hello, my friend. How are you? Alrighty.
Just anytime we see a land...
this.
Yeah, anytime we see a land destruction spell, we are just both overjoyed. We're like, yes, he's doing it.
I promise, we're both sensible adults. No, we're not. We're just big kids in adult suits.
Ooh, it's a big drop.
Oh, hey, Lear. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty nice. All right. Plenty of options here, Corey. Talk us through this.
Yeah, so starting off with that Expressive Iteration, trying to just still kind of make sure you hit your land drops, while Kenji simultaneously is putting a bunch of cards into his graveyard so that when Lear does hit, you can protect it a little bit. You can, even if it were to get destroyed by something like with a Vanishing Verse, at least in response, you could play a couple spells or Fading Hope it back. So we'll see if Kenji just still wants to go as aggressive as possible with lands, or if it's time, or destroying lands, or if it's time to just really dig for another burn down the house or some other way to deal with these creatures. Because this battlefield mixed with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant over there is still very threatening.
Yeah, that card is spooping me out a little bit, so I would like to see this Field of Ruin, possibly in response, if it is activated, to take out that Hive of the Eye Tyrant. But yeah, he's just got to be a little careful here, because the life total is dwindling. The Celestis doing a decent job of keeping it ticking over, just a tiny bit. But yeah, there's a 3-2 and a 1-4 on the other side of the battlefield that could get chunkier.
Yep, and there was also an option to deal with Hive so that like Tenacious Underdog couldn't be blitzed back immediately, but realizing that it's a little more important to interact during combat with Rafine triggering here.
Yeah. So Rafine going to get sent on his merry way, paying the 1 to get around the ward.
And most of the time,
yes.
And most of the time,
No.
fading hope. Most of the time, fading hope on one of these creatures that's so powerful, like Rafine, is not the biggest deal because, well, post combat you just replay it. Not if you don't have any islands after they got blown up. So fading hope kind of acting as a removal spell here, which is really impressive.
Oh, it's so nice. I love this. Another expressive iteration, along with that field of ruin that was left on top there. So. Now, my question is, when do we start blowing stuff up? And Kenji is taunting us. He's just saying, here, teasing us with this card. Come on, do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
And Cleansing Wildfire, unlike Field of Ruin, can hit basics as well. Something Field of Ruin cannot do, so decides to go for the Swamp instead of the Hive.
Hall of Storm Giants. Drawn there off Kenji.
Kenji going to second main there to see if Yuma wanted to use that mana that was floating. And we'll see if we just want to blow up more lands or eventually get this Leer down.
I mean, this has to be Wandering Emperor time, maybe? No. Okay.
We're still
Not
floating
yet,
it, so I
anyway.
bet
Oh,
we're
there we
still
go.
playing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Here it comes. Oh man, this is so silly. I love it. But this is still a very big threat. This board still kind of sucks if I'm on Kenji's side of things, because we have seen two creatures just absolutely wreck another player. So he still has to deal with this stuff.
Exactly. Kenji has done a great job of, cutting off the building blocks from Yuma, but, you still have to deal with the cards on the battlefield. So if we find something like Burn Down the House to deal with the battlefield, and then all of a sudden Yuma's mana base is, frankly trash with all the, the blue and the black sources being destroyed, then it's going to be a little tougher. We do see the Burn Down the House in the graveyard. So at worst, we could go Leer, Burn Down the House. Leer is all of a sudden a 10 mana Wrath of God effect, which is not ideal. You would rather find it off this Memory Deluge, but if it destroys this many permanents, it's still a very strong
It's still
play.
worth, yeah.
Yep.
Still
it also
definitely
takes out
worth
the Wandering
it.
Emperor. Yeah.
So we'll hang on to the treasures. There's a smoldering egg, but I kind of like that line that you just described because, I don't know what would kill him here. Well, basically, these creatures need to go away. Wandering Emperor needs to go away. So I don't think he has very many outs at this point other than Leer, Disciple of the Drowned, into a Burn Down the House.
One thing I can see is maybe Smoldering Egg, start with Spikefield Hazard on the Wandering Emperor to clear it out that way, and then cast enough spells. I guess you could do this, then you cast Memory Deluge to flip it immediately.
Jeez.
And then Spikefield Hazard will deal 2 damage to something, and then the 1 damage from Spikefield Hazard can then go at Wandering Emperor. So, yeah, this kind of does it. Kind of does do it, excuse me.
It does it? I like that more. It's totally fine. Okay, yeah, so Ashmouth Dragon flipped. This ensures that we have a board presence on Kenji's side of things. So no gotchas from the other side of the battlefield. Flame Blast Bolt takes care of Tenacious Underdog. That's an exile effect. And we take care of the other tokens. So, mission accomplished. And I have a board. Good job, Kenji.
I guess that was a better Burn Down the House because it only burned down your opponent's house there and kept the Ashmouth. And now look at this. Like, what do? You just go Vanishing Verse, and then you get to play nothing else on Ashmouth? This is what Kenji was setting up this whole game. Destroying all these lands, taking as much damage, using his life total as a resource, and then all of a sudden, once he gets to this spot, Yuma has to choose between dealing with the threat that's immediately killing him or progressing the battlefield and hoping Kenji has no more gas in the tank after drawing, 3 cards a turn or whatever with Memory Deluge. Well played by Kenji.
No gas in the tank? How about all the gas all the time? As now the graveyard becomes a second-hand courtesy of Leer, Disciple of the Drowned. He's still got a couple basics to go and fetch, so no worries there whatsoever. 2 mana up to do some more stuff. Cleansing Wildfire to just blow up some more lands. And if there was an advantage bar, I would say, yeah, Kenji's on fire right now.
Yeah, but any Yuma fans out there, have no fear. Yuma's had an insane season already and is still in the #1 spot here for challengers, so still got plenty of room for that.